Hi again everybody, sorry for the delay, I've got a new computer which makes editing much faster and better, but it took a bit of time to transfer all of my stuff across. But I'm back with a couple of new games to look at. Well, they're not really new games because, you know, they're like 20 years old, but anyway. In episode 43 I played Clay Fighter, Wario Land, and the almighty Mega Man X. Episode 44 will feature Super Metroid and Shadowrun. What games do I need to squeeze in here? Let's check them out. I would imagine there are a lot of folks who've never heard of Spike McFang. Its Japanese title was Super Devil Wars Darabo-chan. Oddly enough, this very chibi Japanese style game got a North American release under the title The Twisted Tales of Spike McFang. It was created by Bulletproof Software, whose greatest success were the Nintendo ports of Tetris. Apart from a couple of other relatively average and infamous games, Bulletproof didn't really have a huge library of popular titles to call its own back in the 90s. So what kind of game is this Spike McFang? Well, I suppose you'd have to call it a role-playing game since your character gains experience, casts spells, visits towns and levels up. But on the other hand, it's all pretty lightweight. The game is completely linear, it's not particularly long either. It reminds me a bit of those Enix RPGs, in particular Soul Blazer, but cuter. Much cuter. There is a story, but there's not a huge amount to tell. It's set in the world of Vladimasko, a kind of monster-filled fantasy land. There's 3 main islands, each with its own leader, but one day one of the leaders goes maverick and declares war on the other 2. This story is about the kids of the 3 leaders, however, who work together to bring peace back to Vladimasko. In particular, the one you control is the son of Dracuman, none other than cute little Spike McFang. Spike has a couple of main attacks. He can spin and whack enemies with his cape, or if he's looking for a bit more distance-based damage, he can toss his hat. Yeah, this is a cool attack, and it gets upgraded as the game progresses. But it does leave little Spike open and exposed when it's being thrown, so you gotta be careful. Along the way you get a couple of tag-alongs who are the kids of the other land's leaders. I'm really not quite sure why they're there. They sort of help you fight, but they don't really do that much. It's kind of like they had this cool idea for multiplayer, but then ditched it at the last minute. You know, apparently the American version was actually made harder than the Japanese original. That's gotta be a first. What that means is that occasionally it's beneficial, and often necessary, to stop what you're doing and grind some enemies for a while. It's a bit annoying really, and slows down the pace of the game. Most of the gameplay is fairly straightforward, and it's not too difficult, although there are a few epic and ever so slightly frustrating boss fights that can stop you dead in your tracks. At the end of the day, Spike McFang isn't the unknown classic that I was kinda hoping it would be. It's got lots of charm and it's enjoyable enough to play, but it just seems a bit rough around the edges and a bit light and nothingy to be kept in the Gaming Hall of Fame. I'd recommend it if you are after something a little bit different and anime-ish, but I think it falls a bit short of standing the almighty test of time. Ah, why Shining Force 2 and not 1? Well, time I suppose. I'd never played either, and I'd heard that the second game was better, and the second game was recommended to me by Pure Lunatic. Let's check it out. If you're not familiar with the games, Sega's Shining series has about 20,000 games now, and this was the second game in the Shining Force offshoot. It's a strategy RPG, something along the lines of Fire Emblem. It reminds me a bit of a simplified Final Fantasy Tactics. First impressions. This game has very basic graphics with some almost 8-bit looking tiles filling up the environment. The character portraits are nice though, and the music's quite okay for a Mega Drive game.
You shall not pass!
Battles are the usual turn-based strategy style. It all moves nice and quick, which is good because I don't usually have the patience for this type of game. I don't know how many times I've tried to get into Final Fantasy Tactics and just got bored. The way EXP works is the ones who achieve the most in battle level up the fastest. So if you've got one character that's stronger than the others and does more damage, they're more likely to level up. I'm not quite sure if this eventually balances out. Also, each battle that you partake in is predetermined, so if you come up against a mob of enemies that's proving too tough, it's not like you can just go back and grind some EXP somewhere else. I found this concept a bit troublesome for an RPG. But I've got to say, I enjoyed this game quite a bit more than I thought I would. As I've mentioned before, strategy role-playing games usually aren't my thing, but I think having all of the bells and whistles stripped back and keeping things nice and simple made it more appealing to me. There were a few moments of frustration where I clearly wasn't using the right strategy to succeed, but from what I played, which wasn't the whole game mind you, it did keep me pretty sucked in. The story is pretty stock standard, nothing I hadn't heard 1,000 different variations on. Kings, wizards, rat thieves, etc, etc, but at least it's got a story and it's told well, and there is quite a lot of story in there. It's funny, it almost feels like this whole game is stuck on fast forward. Everything moves so quickly, both in battles and out of them. I think I'm going to say Shining Force 2 stands the test of time. Even though I'm not much of a strategy nut, I could see this being a really enjoyable experience to people who are. There's still more games to come. I hope I'll finish off these extra episodes before the end of this year. Happy gaming everybody. Peace to the out.